Hey, Sean, do you know what? I think that our listener want real protection against cyber risk, and I know that High Trust is the leader in cybersecurity assurance. But what makes them the go-to choice?
Well, according to our friends at HITRUST, because their framework covers 100% of the known tactics, techniques, and procedures, in 2024, organizations with a HITRUST certification had just a 0.59% incident rate, meaning 99.41 stayed breach-free.
That's solid, but what about staying sharp over time?
HITRUST regular certification process isn't just a checkbox, it actually drives improvement. Repeat customers see up to 54% fewer corrective actions needed year over year. And now, with their new AI security assessment and certification, you can actually tackle AI risk with confidence as well.
Then check out the iTrust framework. Go to hightrustalliance.net to learn more.
All right.
Todd.
Let's do it. Hey,
We're here.
Sean.
It's InfoSecurity 2025, 30-year anniversary
Yes.
of InfoSec.
Insane.
It is insane.
It's been going on since 1995.
That makes me feel old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Mikko Hipponen's keynote a couple days ago, and he was reflecting on, it's like, oh yeah, this has been going on for 30 years, which means I've been doing this for 31 years.
Right? I think we're of the same.
Yeah.
the same. What's the right word? Anyway,
Same vintage.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So, yeah, Miko's a great guy to kind of predict based on what's happened. Kind of
For
see
sure.
what's coming
Yeah.
up. I'm a big believer of being in the moment, though.
Yeah.
Because that's what the business is all about, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you have to look at the future and understand where you've been, but when the bad actors are after systems and data and money, you have to be in the moment and
Sure.
and keeping on top of what that looks like can be challenging.
Yeah.
So Todd, maybe a quick word about your role at runZero.
Sure.
And what you're up to, and then we'll get into exposure and the attack surface management and
I dig it.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. So I'm the Vice President of Security Research at runZero. And what that means is that I poke around at loads of things. I focus mainly on vulnerability research, exploit trends, stuff like that. And lately, I was looking at our set of scoring systems that we use.
Set.
Yeah, there's several. Don't worry. Why have one standard when you can have 5?
And why invest
Yeah.
differently in each one? Yeah, exactly. We'll get into
And
that.
so I focused in on what I think are the 3 most popular, and that's CVSS, which is the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, EPSS, which is the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, and SSVC, which is the Stakeholder-Specific Vulnerability Categorization. SSVC is a little bit of a weird one. I used to use it a lot when I was in federal government. CISA likes that one a lot, but it's more of a decision tree than a scoring framework. It does come down to am I going to do something right now, which is what I think all scoring systems really want to do.
Right.
But looking at things like CVSS, EPSS, and SSVC, what I came to the conclusion was, and talked to a bunch of people in the industry too, is there's something in all of them, but they don't really, the endpoint number that you get to, or whatever the end state is, aren't super useful on the day-to-day, right? So for example, in CVSS, you will end up with a score of 7.8. That is the most common score in CVSS.
Okay.
There's many paths to get to 7.8 specifically. Right. And so everything ends up being well, is it 7.8 or more, or is it less than that? So it becomes a binary of, do I do a thing, do I not do a thing? But even with that binary, you're still left with 50,000 something. And that's okay, if we're only patching maybe 2% to 5% of all vulnerabilities, that's not a great outcome, right? I'm still left with tons and tons. My priority is still a giant blob at that point. But
what are organizations doing? How are they using the different numbers to?
That's
effectively the binary, right? Is we're drawing a line somewhere.
Yeah. They just fail. They just fail at it, which is a bummer. Then that makes everyone unhappy. But there are things in CVSS like the vector string, which I like a lot, which I think actually has like stood the test of time, where there's like 7 questions. One of them is a little weird, but like 7 to 8 questions you can ask about every vulnerability, say like, and you can like you can bucket them that way, right? So like, for example, like CVSS starts off with the access vector, right? So it's either going to be local or network or physical or adjacent, whatever that means. So I can say like, if there's a vulnerability that like it requires physical access and some kind of privilege, like I have to like log in to exploit it. Well, now that's really easy for me to detect if it's being attacked, because I can see the guy right over there, physically logging in, like, knock it off, you. Like that's my incident response.
Right.
And so that's great, right? I can cut out a bunch that I don't have to care about today, right? The problem is that they are pretty broad, and so you end up with this like, if everything's a priority, then nothing is, right? And so that, to me, that's like both a failing of CVSS, but there is a nugget in there of like something that is useful for defenders to be able to look at. So not a total loss, and it has been around. It's the oldest one. CVSS 3.1 is like 10 years old now, maybe 11 years old now.
You said something that I think might be interesting, and so the research or the analysts looking at the vulnerability, they're making the decision based on this. And I'm wondering how far removed from the business risk that is, and I don't know if that...
That's the thing, right, this is where you start getting into like, is this vulnerability relevant to me in my environment, right? So like, if I run a small to medium business as an IT guy, right, and everybody's using MacBooks, and we have Google Cloud, right, as our cloud provider. Like, I don't care about Windows bugs at that point. I don't care about AWS bugs at that point. That's what I care about. And so like, it's that kind of like environmental awareness that IT people can be good at, right? Because they can know. That's the trick. What's in their environment, and that definitely should color like, what am I tackling today, right? As far as like what is relevant to the business, honestly, like SSVC, the least mathy of them, is actually really good at that, because SSVC defines, you end up with a definition of like, well, what is mission critical for me today? Like, if this goes away, am I out of business? Or if this goes away, can I kind of limp along? Or if this goes away, it doesn't matter, right? I don't care if it goes away, right? SSVC does contextualize all that for the defense. And it gives you a way to say like, hey boss, I got to stop doing this thing that I was doing, and I have to focus on this thing, because if this goes down or gets compromised or whatever, like we're done. We're dead in the water. And so that gives the responder like that ammunition to tell their management of like, please let me prioritize this sensibly, right? And so that's for me like the real use of SSVC, is being able to articulate that and be able to say and be able to prove it, right? You can always go back to your decision tree and say like, yep, this is how I got there. Do you disagree? And then you can have that conversation.
Well, can most organizations go back to their decision tree?
Today,
that seems
rarely.
Like a mature...
It is a level of maturity, right? Because it requires, not only do you know like what your assets are, but what they do.
Yeah.
And so it does require like some
and
expertise.
Likely to be,
yeah, and then other like more IT security bits of it, like is an exploit exist out in the world? Has it been exploited?
Industry being targeted.
Right. So that is the cost of SSVC, is the cost of expertise, which today I don't know if we can get away from that quite yet. But we help. runZero helps.
Well, let's talk about that, because there's a lot of other things we want to get to, but just so there are scores. Three we've talked about.
Right.
Knowing what those mean to you, so you can make a decision on what to do next and where you draw a line. And I think it doesn't sound like we're going to get away from drawing a line. Maybe we will. So what do you do to kind of help with just with that part of this equation?
So what runZero does, the reason why I'm here is because the technology is super cool. we help shine a light in like the dark cobwebby corners of your network that you don't know about, right? So like for the very traditional IT, your MacBooks and your Windows laptops and your servers and your routers and all that, that's pretty well covered, right? Everybody has an EDR and everybody has credentials and all that, but like,
So we're talking about asset inventory.
it's that blend of like vulnerability management, asset management, and like kind of exposure management. But turns out our networks aren't just made of that. Our networks have a bunch of like dark matter that just kind of live there. And so it's things like all of your weird IoT stuff, all of your infrastructure that you don't really log into. A bunch of vendor supplied stuff we found in folks' networks. It's like, oh yeah, I have to like drop my box in to your network to do things, you know, that you paid for. It's like, cool, how do I manage that? Don't worry about it, we got it. Like, okay.
That's exactly right.
You know, things like...
And do those things have vulnerabilities that are published?
So, yes, but it depends on what you mean by vulnerability. So there's like the technical wonky definition of vulnerability that nerds like, right? It's like, oh, it's like an undocumented API, right, is a vulnerability. And but then there are like these exposures that don't neatly fit into like a vulnerability bucket that will never have a CVE, right? Will never get subjected to any of these scoring systems. And they're things like default passwords, well-known passwords, misconfigurations that, you know, put the management interface on the wrong side of the network, for example. Like that's the kind of thing that like won't ever see like a CVE ID. Yeah. And so what runZero does is that we also uncover all of that too. And we do it without having to already know like a priori what the login is, what the passwords are, we don't have to install an agent anywhere, right? Like we treat your network like a black box much in the same way that like an attacker does, right? And so we definitely have adopted an attacker mindset when it comes to like assessing your network for risk and exposure and all that, which I think is really powerful. Like I really like that.
Well, I mean, so it's easy, especially for a lot of people who are deep in security. It's traditionally rooted in IT.
Yes.
But there's a lot
typically,
but there's
we're
a lot
30 years in here.
I know. You know, we've seen some shift to OT environments. Really.
Yeah.
Of course, we can look at mobile and cloud, and those have some deep investments in looking at risk management, vulnerability management, and whatnot. But IT, cloud, mobile, bring in OT. I'm sure AI and all those systems are going to have. I don't know if those are considered cloud or if they're on-prem, how's that look, but having a view of all of that, I guess, my perspective requires also a level of maturity and a level of tooling that may or may not exist easily. You know, I suspect because of what you do and how you do it, you get a view of all of those worlds.
Yes, and like we're very focused on what do attackers go after. Right? So like one thing I have a hard time getting my head around is like, you'll see in trade shows, especially like this one, there's always this undercurrent of like post-quantum cryptography, right? We're not a crypto solution or anything like that, but I see people talking about it, it's like, cool, are people going after that? Like, are people doing that right now?
Right.
Like, is that really what I have to be focused on today?
Right. That's what
because
I'm
like
talking
I
about
can't deal with like default passwords today. Like that's our big problem right now. So like, cool, great. I'm glad someone is looking at like quantum cryptography and post-quantum cryptanalysis and all that. But that's not the problem today, right? That I'm pretty confident with that. Now, the moment someone breaks quantum cryptography, we'll see if all those other products do actually do anything. I don't know.
We'll find out.
But like,
I'm hoping.
I guess. Or don't worry about it and deal with your default passwords. We can scan around for that kind of thing. And so, but what you're saying is like we had this moment where we were all fretting, I'd say maybe 10 years ago. So when we were merely a 20-year-old industry, it's like, hey, your barriers between like what's inside your network and outside your network are getting kind of porous, right? And things move around, and like, hey, we got these cool smartphones now, and like they move around, and sometimes people work from home, and all of that. And that
Coffee
trend
shops
has
or VPNs or whatever, yeah.
has just exploded out, right? And so there is very little today that is truly like separated from the internet, right? The internet has reached in to every network, right? Because everybody loves TCP/IP. It's an open standard. It's been around since like 1979. But the I does stand for internet.
Yeah.
And so if it has an IP address and a port, it can be reached from the internet, you know. And so we all, like, security people are very fast to say like, oh, just segment your network, you know, just put all your like fragile stuff in one network, or you know, whatever, just keep it off like the main thing. It's like, okay, cool. But it also turns out everything's a router now. Like many cases in customer networks, we found printers that are multi-homed across networks. Weird things like smart plugs and smart light bulbs. Often end up being multi-homed on several networks at once. And so, great, that means if I attack and compromise that, I can now use that to hop between networks. Oopsie doodle, right? Like that's a major problem. And so that's the kind of thing that like runZero is really good at, right? Because you're never going to install an agent on your light bulb. You probably don't have a password to your light bulb. But we can identify it regardless, and we can figure out like, oh, was there a new vulnerability for this thing like this week? And that's the kind of thing that we surface through our rapid response updates. So everybody who's on runZero, when you log in the morning, you can see like our most recent rapid responses of things that are in the news, which are sometimes they're newsy and kind of fluffy, but we know like everyone's freaking out about it, and we know your boss is going to freak out about it. So you'll have something to say when you get called in 10 minutes. It's like, hey, what are we doing with like the latest named vulnerability? It's like, don't worry about it. We already have a scan. We already have it there, and you know, I've identified the 3 things that actually matter for that, and we're already fixing it. So don't worry, boss. Go back to the golf course or whatever you do, whatever boss types do.
That's the scenarios that matter, right?
Yeah.
And so, what other stories can you share of findings and I don't know, maybe some common ones that you see in many places, and some strange ones that some organizations may have that they don't realize?
Well, I just started working on the next paper that I'm writing. So sneak peek, folks. I'm going to be looking at end-of-life operating systems, applications, and hardware, and that because I suspect, and I'm going to go dig in the data and find out. I suspect there's kind of a lot of end-of-life stuff that people still use. You know, so like I know like. For example, in like hospitals and anything medical tech, right, is really just Windows 7, right? Which has been end of life for years and years and years. But this October 14th, 2025, Windows 10 goes end of life. And I have heard Zero talk about that here at InfoSec Europe. Of like, hey, what are you guys doing about that? Are you on the path?
Usually a lot of talk around it.
Right, and it's coming up, and I'm a little worried that, you know, we've seen this in the past. We saw it specifically with Windows 7, where Microsoft says, "Hey, Windows 10 is end of life, October. Cool. Guess what happens in November? Cool O-Day that people have been sitting on for 3 years, waiting for end of life, and then they release." And now it's a dare to Microsoft. Usually, in cases like that, if it's a big deal, like Microsoft will say, okay, end of life except for this one last thing. And they'll fix it, usually. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And so because of that event, I want to look at other end of life things, because like we see it all the time. People run end of life distributions of Linux, for example, and it's just been running, and it's been running great for years and years and years. And that's kind of the thing with security versus like sustainability, right? You can run insecure software. It doesn't have like moving parts or anything. It doesn't wear out. It'll keep going right up into the moment it's attacked and compromised, right? And
so the memory leak.
Yeah, exactly. But that's how it goes. So I think like between the operating systems, you know, select applications, and especially like hardware goes end of life. Often like the company is gone, and so like, and it's all just like firmware, right? It's all like a packed binary. So good luck getting patches for that thing. And so that's kind of the kind of survey work that I'm just starting, like as soon as I get back home from London, I'm going to be diving into that. So
tell me a little bit about, and I have one bigger question we'll close with, but tell me a little bit about how teams respond to using runZero. Because I can just imagine a big list every day coming in, we have to, and then of course it grows with the new stuff that comes, and so they work through the list, and they have to communicate to their boss has to communicate to executive staff.
Right.
Talk to me about how all that looks with runZero compared to other
So a lot
methods.
of times, a lot of times people have been doing like asset management, Microsoft Excel is like the #1 software for asset management, right? Today. And
Still,
so,
sadly.
Oh yeah. And so what we offer, right, is an opinionated list of like the stuff that you have, right? We can sort things into buckets of concern, right, ranging from informational only up through critical, like you really should deal with this right now. And so the UI is very nice. You can export it anyway. You can export to CSV and read it in your Excel if you want. But like the UI is also very nice, and you can sort and tag and do all this other. You can enrich it on your end with like the information, the knowledge that you have about your environment. But when people run it like often for the first time, like we've seen that people on average, our customers notice that they have 25% more assets than they thought they had, right? So they may sign up for a trial and say like, and they figure it's like, I probably have like 500 assets. Right. And then they run it, and it's like, you have 625 assets. I'm like, cool, what are all the other ones? And people find like old test environments that they thought were decommed, right? Yep. They'll find bridges into other people's networks. We've seen that where there was a company that had sold off some of its IP space to like a residential ISP, right? And like didn't really tell anyone about it, and so suddenly they have like residential ISP users inside their company network. It's like, oh dang, where did all these TVs come from? Right. And so they'll find that kind of thing. So it's like that, and it's fun and it's funny. Don't get me wrong, it's hilarious. But it's also, it's like, oh gosh, I've had this going
sad on one side, funny on another, and
and now you have something to do, right?
Oh boy, if you're on the bad actor side.
Oh yeah, exactly, right. And these are the kinds of weird configurations that attackers love, right? Especially when it's things like old test networks, all the end-of-life stuff that can't be patched, that have known vulnerabilities. Like we've seen even like the last crop of research reports from places like Mandiant and Verizon's DBIR, right? They all say like, hey, attackers are using exploits more, and it's like it's almost like 25% now. It's like cool, but that means like there's a lot that's still not O-Day stuff. It's all like old vulnerabilities and normal misconfigurations that you find everywhere, right? To the tune of like, it's like 75-80% of that, right, is still that kind of work-a-day, breaking and entering, not like super ninja O-Day stuff. Right. So
we were speaking the other day. We touched on the M&A use case. Tell me a bit about that, man, because that's
sure. Yeah,
cool.
This is like my favorite use case of runZero. Thank you for bringing it up. So you're big corp, right? And you're like, hey, we're going to be acquiring some startup, right? That might have a couple hundred assets, a little homey network, right? It's like, but we want to know, like, well, what's the tech debt we're going to be dealing with if we acquire this technology, right? Like, what's the infrastructure look like? What's all that? And you'll say, hey, what do you got going on? And they're like, normal stuff, Windows and Cisco, like everybody, whatever. And they're like, cool, do you mind if I look? They're like, well, we'd rather you didn't. And you say, but, we're going to give you a lot of money, so we'd like to look. And
what are we buying?
Yeah, what actually are we buying here? And so on the acquirer's part, they may, and then you deploy runZero in the acquiree's network, and that is like one of the more offensive uses, I'd say, of runZero. It's that you're not attacking them,
right?
But you definitely want to know what's
interrogating.
up. It's more of a friendly interrogation. runZero is a very polite set of scanners, very polite. We don't send garbage and garbage traffic.
No agents, so you're not
we have no
deploying
agent.
it.
There's nothing for you to install or anything like that, and you don't actually need any cooperation on the target network, right? And so it's like, well, we're going to ask, and we're going to ask politely but firmly, what is going on over here? And those are the kinds of things where I don't think anyone's ever tanked a deal because of it,
Right.
but sometimes the price moves around a little bit.
Right.
So that is that, and that's value right there, right? Of being able to know what am I getting into when we eventually merge these networks or figure out what we want to keep and what we want to toss.
So Todd, this is really cool stuff.
It's super cool. I love working on it.
Hopefully we have more time to chat different topics and get into different scenarios. One thing that I often ask on my podcast is, I make a statement and I ask people's opinion on it. My statement is, I feel security is rich with data.
Yes.
That we can connect to the business in a way where we actually drive the business to be more secure so that the revenue can grow, market share can grow, and we can protect both of those things. The example I almost always give is around vulnerability management.
Yeah.
Where I picture this world where huge teams, all they do is patch all day long, every day.
Yeah.
If we could just use that data and other data to say, if we just eliminated this thing, changed this stack, changed this app to be something different, one that has less vulnerabilities, we can reduce the exposure, we can reduce the impact on the vulnerability management team and the response team.
Yeah.
That's the example I give. What do you see? Is that a reality, perhaps?
In a word, I mean, that sounds lovely. It sounds great.
It's a dream I have.
Right. Yeah. It's a wonderful dream. From what I've looked at over trends in CVE, just the normal way we score things, right, in CVSS, one of the things I've noticed is that we seem to be producing vulnerable software at the same rate we always have, right? And that's depressing to me. It's we haven't actually gotten any better at making less vulnerable software because that's the only kind of software we know how to make still. And in this brave new world of AI-assisted code writing, I don't think the vulnerabilities are going away anytime soon. So
we'll just scale that to another level.
Yeah. So
all right.
I hope to join you one day in your cybertopia.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep preaching that, and hopefully by putting it out there, it'll happen. Well, Todd, I know what you're doing. runZero.
Yep.
Keep up the good work. I hope to have a chat with you on the new research you're doing.
Yeah.
More
for that end of the year, probably
stuff.
September-ish. We'll release that. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right.
Well, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for listening, watching. Connect with Todd. Connect with the team at runZero. Look beyond all your scores and actually get the context and the intel you need to help your team respond to the moment, that you're all in. So, thanks everybody.
Hey Sean, do you know what? I think that our listener want real protection against cyber risk, and I know that HITRUST is the leader in cybersecurity assurance. But what makes them the go-to choice?
Well, according to our friends at HITRUST, because their framework covers 100% of the known tactics, techniques, and procedures, in 2024, organizations with a HITRUST certification had just a 0.59% incident rate, meaning 99.41 stayed breach-free.
That's solid, but what about staying sharp over time?
HITRUST regular certification process isn't just a checkbox, it actually drives improvement. Repeat customers see up to 54% fewer corrective actions needed year over year. And now with their new AI security assessment and certification, you can actually tackle AI risk with confidence as well.
Then check out the HITRUST framework. Go to hitrustalliance.net to learn more.